All right. Let me just see if we are live. We should be at any time soon. I'm just checking my LinkedIn here. At least on my phone, I haven't come up live yet. But all right, we are live.
We are live on
my
LinkedIn.
Friend. We're live on LinkedIn. My friend Bradley Lane and I. All right. So, hello everyone. This is Carlos. We are live on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, Thomas Penton could not join us, but since we had the time booked, I invited my friend and Evolve ambassador now to join me just for a quick chat, talk about his career. We recently done a video, so yeah, Bradley, thanks very much for joining me, and let's talk about your career. So how about we start from the beginning? You worked at House of Fraser, John Lewis. Perhaps you can take us, back then, and tell us a little bit about your career and what you're up to today.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Thanks for having me today. And just to announce to everybody, this is my first live on LinkedIn, so please be gentle with me. So my career very much started for me at House of Fraser. So I was there just over or just under 10 years, and very much at the beginning of my career there. It was on the shop floor. So I worked in a number of stores for House of Fraser, one of them being Blue Water, which is in Kent. And that was a new store format for the brand. So it really gave me the opportunity to understand the target customer, the price points that we were working with, get involved in terms of the shop design and layout, and meet the relevant stakeholders that I'd be interacting with from around the business. So buying and merchandising and distribution. And it was through working on the new store format that I had the very exciting opportunity to move into head office on secondment. So I moved into head office, joined one of the buying teams there, and that's where I suppose I got an interest for buying, very much working with the buying teams. They would come into one of my stores, and because I had a one-on-one relationship with and most loyal customers, I was able to feed into the relevant buyers the brands that customers were asking for. So I already started to establish relationships with stakeholders very early on. And then moving into head office, it gave me that opportunity to influence some of our buying decisions, the brands we were arranging, the price points we were going after. So that definitely was an eye-opener for me. And it gave me the ability to understand brands from a brand point of view, from a vendor perspective. So customers would come in, and here's an example. We want Gucci handbags. So I'd feed back to the central buying team that customers are coming in asking for Gucci handbags. But there's so much more that plays out in terms of having distribution for a brand. Is it the right demographic? Is it the right store environment? Can we have a shop fit, etc.? So yeah, very quickly I started to learn more about brands. Post House of Fraser, I moved to John Lewis. And it was at John Lewis that I started to get a buzz for everything e-commerce related. So joined John Lewis, I think it was back in 2007. You can tell I've not looked at my own LinkedIn recently in terms of when I joined. I joined covering someone's maternity leave, and I was in a great position whereby I came in, I was keen, I wanted to learn and had an opinion in terms of as a shopper, as a customer, how I'd like to buy products online. So I was fortunate I was able to stay on with the business, I was offered a permanent position, and I moved around into various departments during the course of my time there. I was a business development manager responsible for expanding fashion online at John Lewis. When I first joined John Lewis, online was about a £60 million turnover. When I left, it was a £4 billion turnover. So without a doubt, it wasn't just down to me. It was, we were a super tanker. There was, multiple people working with me and around me that were driving that revenue number up year on year. So yeah, I did the BDM role. Then I became a website category manager. That's when I really started to move away from, I suppose, considering what I liked as a shopper and how I wanted to shop, to better understanding en masse how other people like to shop, in terms of, it was a high ranking, predominantly homeware retailer at the time when I first joined, and it kind of, when leaving the business, it kind of plateaued out. Still very well known for
Mm-hmm.
homewares, but equally important is technology and fashion. But yeah, going back to my point, it was when I moved into website category manager role that I started to understand more about the nuts and bolts in terms of a website, layout, design, technical background, etc. And for my sins, I was involved in replatforming and updating of the johnlewis.com website, which, without a doubt, you ask anybody that was involved in any of those initiatives, but there's a saying here in the UK: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Without a doubt, there were lots of late nights and lots of caffeine, to say the least. You kind of come out the other side. Google crawls your website. Everybody expects it to be instant. It wasn't. It takes time to, build that equity, build your ranking back up. And then it was, it'd be easy to sit here and say then it was plain sailing, but far from it. Then comes another strategy in terms of, okay, how do we obtain more brands? How do we improve our trading terms? What can we do to promote brands on banners and branded shops, etc.? So I was heavily involved in those aspects as well. And then in my last role, I was a senior manager leading one of the digital teams. So overseeing, you could say, content creation. So photography, AI, AR, the creation of CAD drawings, the ability to drop a sofa from your mobile device, using AR technology into your living room, into your lounge or your living room, to very much visualize how that piece of furniture is going to look under your windowsill versus in the center of the room, in front of the television. So that was really exciting. And then I also oversaw copywriting. So what's really important to John Lewis is that it has an impartial tone of voice. It in no ways does it ever want to be leading in terms of you must buy this product. Whenever writing copy, we would always try to give you the pros and cons of something and be impartial instead of influencing someone's buying decision. So yeah, I was involved in the tone of voice, brand language, SEO. So having the most relevant keywords to describe a product, whether that's the description, the attributes, or the descriptive copy. And then the final component, very much, was merchandising and promotion. So, taking a product and deciding logically where something's going to be positioned on the website, and also listening to your customers or your visitors to the site. So, in today's day and age, all too quickly, a brand might say, okay, I want to position my product everywhere, all over the website. But it's really important to, make sure you have the right locations when you're positioning a product. So yeah, having conversations with brands around where something should be positioned on the website, and also being respectful of a brand's position as well. So I worked with a number of beauty brands, for example, and we're talking about, we're operating here in the luxury space, whereby one luxury brand doesn't want to be positioned next to another luxury brand because they deem it brand damaging, or it's competitive in their eyes. That was an interesting one because there's one particular brand, such as Chanel, that wanted its own page design, so the PDP. It didn't want to come up in terms of internal search. We weren't permitted to do any paid media, so PPC, paid search, against it. But then what we did over the course of time, over about 2 to 3 years, was share with the brand this data, internal data that was demonstrating that customers were expecting to find Chanel when they're browsing the website through search, etc. So as I was saying, over the course of time, we were in a position whereby we could convince the brand to change their stance, change their positioning in terms of how you find their products online. So yeah, pretty varied. I
Super
think I said
interesting. Yeah.
after you.
No. I think it's no, very interesting. I would like to because okay, then you work for John Lewis, and then you left John Lewis after 14 years, right? To join the V&A Museum in a consulting role, like to help them with the replatforming, and it's a completely other setup. It's like the V&A Museum is part of the government, right? So one institution was private, profit driven, and the other thing is there are other incentives. So I think that was also interesting when we first spoke, and perhaps you can comment on that experience as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, kind of stepping away from John Lewis, and after 14 years, which I would say was my safety net, my comfort zone, I then moved into a role whereby I was going in there on a consultancy basis for a fixed amount of time, and very much, as you were saying, yes, it's government backed in terms of some funding, but they are very reliant on fundraising as well. Selling tickets, selling membership. The biggest eye opener for me at the V&A Museum was having to get involved in so much more compared to a large organisation at John Lewis. So whereby if you think back a moment ago, I was saying I was overseeing the copywriting, and that covered SEO. Yes, that did cover search engine optimization, but that was us working with a specialist in the marketing team within John Lewis, whereby at the V&A, it was my responsibility to source an agency to work with us, to provide us with the guidelines, and then to bring on board a copywriter to write the product descriptions. I think what was really interesting about the V&A was that they had recently replatformed the website. So when I came in, there was a lot of great work that was going on before I joined, but they were very much looking for someone to come in with expertise in that space, having replatformed myself at John Lewis, and give guidance around, okay, what are the quick, what are the quick wins, the low hanging fruit, and then what is the more mid to long term opportunities for us to continue to raise money for the museum and have the ability to reinvest it back into the museum. So yeah, that was a really interesting time at the V&A. And in comparison, I often talk to colleagues outside of the 9 to 5, and we talk about what it's like to work in one company versus another. At John Lewis, we used to think that everything went relatively slowly. but actually in comparison, everything moved relatively quickly, because we were chasing money. At the V&A, it was a much smaller team, whereby my fingers were in many other pots, but there was only a certain pace we could move at, because there wasn't a world of resources around us to go faster. But then I pulled together a 3-year strategy, which would unlock more resource, more funding, the ability to test and learn more, and to introduce new functionality to improve the user, customer, or visitor experience, whichever you want to call it, kind of thing.
Super interesting. Now you're a bit of in a career transition, let's say. We've been talking about this. Would you like to comment a bit about your future plans and what's cooking, what's next, what's the idea?
Yeah, so since leaving the V&A, I talk a lot about I've challenged myself. If everybody knew on this call what has kind of happened to me over the course of the last 20 years, there's been a lot of disruption, I would say, to put it nicely, in my life. But it's kind of spurred me forward and encouraged me to just keep pushing forward and trying different things. So most recently, I've set up my own consultancy. So arguably, you could say, okay, I was doing that at the V&A, and yes, I was, and that was for a brand. But I'm now working for myself, whereby I'm having to go out there, make relationships, build relationships. Carlos, you and I have spoken at great length about it. It's very easy to just connect with people, but it's a little bit like likes, isn't it? You're just adding connections, but actually building relationships is really important. For you, as it is for me.
Yeah.
So very much I'm starting to build relationships and put my name out there. I'm starting to, on LinkedIn, drive my brand visibility, me as a brand, which I think initially is quite hard to do when you stop and think about it. I posted my first snackable video as such, which spoke about my early career. It was Carlos, who's on the call with me, that interviewed me as such, as part of Evolve. That was really interesting. And I talk about being pushed out of your comfort zone. I'd only ever been interviewed on LinkedIn once before for a video. So I was kind of putting myself out there, talking about me. It was all very, I suppose, I look back and think, okay, I've always held a lot of this close to my chest. It's there on my LinkedIn profile, but sometimes there's nothing better than actually hearing somebody talk about themselves, which can be hard. So yeah, I did a video with you, and that's got some, it's got some good interactions in terms of key metrics and comments that are very much cheering me on from the sideline, and from that there's come some interest, whereby I'm starting to reach out to some of those people that have messaged me or left a comment supporting what I'm trying to do. So ultimately, in terms of consultancy, I'm trying to start something up focused on e-commerce, omnichannel, playing into that space, leadership as well, I'd say, supporting startups, small and mid-size businesses. So yeah, there's a lot going on at the minute, as well as
Sweet. Yeah.
Sorry, keep chatting. We've got a lag, everybody. Anyone on the call? There's a slight lag, so we might talk over each other. Apologies.
I love the talk about disruption. I think the pandemics caused a lot of disruption in a lot of people, to be honest. It showed us, right? It transformed. It forced us to change. I think to look inwards, right, and to look at least that's how I felt about everything. So I became even closer to my daughters. Was great, and then the Evolve thing. I decided to go head on and invest my time in building those relationships, because I believe, like, and we spoke a few times about this. I think you see so many things happening in the D2C world, like the
Mm.
direct to consumer world. So you see brands partnering with, let's say, influencers. But I think people like you, like Ron, like Scott, you can be brands as well, and there's so many opportunities, like, for you to start your own thing, because you've already proved it. You've built many things. It
Mm.
doesn't really matter whether it was within a corporation or not. You guys were there, being entrepreneurs and building your thing, and delivering results. So I think, for professionals like you, there are so many opportunities in the future, if you're sharing your perspective, and that's the whole thing about Evolve. So, Bradley, what I would like to talk to you about is disruption. We tested the other day ChatGPT, and since you have a very strong content background, what do you think it's going to change out there, with AI, and for companies in digital commerce that there's a lot of copy, right? Copywriting,
Yeah.
product description, and how do you think things are gonna change in that regard?
It's a really interesting one because the chat GTP, have I said it right?
GPT.
GPT. Oh, I was talking, I was talking offline about this the other day. Um, to some friends that I used to work with in the industry, and I was saying that I did a piece of work with you, didn't I, Carlos? And
Hmm.
very quickly, I'd gone from, I don't know, I'll make this up, 2,000 characters, and we've got this tool that actually broke it down into, I don't know, 500. So very much
Yeah.
it could take, as I would say, my words, the waffle out of, the romance out of the statement that I'm trying to pull together. But talking to, yeah, as I was saying, some ex-colleagues that have now become friends. One of them at John Lewis. There's a real desire from the brand to keep the human touch. But actually, I shared an
Hmm.
example of the example that we pulled together, and I said, okay, well, tell me how this isn't the human touch. So we had a bit of a debate about it. In terms of if you're a large scale retailer, it kind of brings to the table the ability to write descriptive copy really quickly. When I left John Lewis, I'd onboarded um, a business based out of Stockholm that was off the back of product attributions, 100% cotton, crew neck t-shirt, um, long sleeve, that kind of thing. It could pull together a script that you could put onto the product page. So that quite a bit of filling of information. But the ability of chat and the way in which it's going, it would just speed up the whole process. And even if you look at the technology that's here in the here and now, if we jump forward 3 to 5 years, I personally think it won't be recognizable. Everything will continue to move at pace, and it's what customers are expecting. We have these mobile devices, and we expect the information in the palm of our hand. So another example, I was scrolling on LinkedIn earlier, trying to find a connection that I had interacted with at a recent event, and I couldn't get his details to come up. So I was getting frustrated with the LinkedIn search facility. LinkedIn, if there's anybody listening, please don't take down this video. Um, but I had to fine tune my search results to then bring up the individual. But I think going forward, everything would just become a bit more intuitive. You know, that technology will aim to continue to think for us, to give us the results that we want. You know, a few years ago, I was looking at trends that will occur, you know, technology trends that will be there in, I don't know, 2030, I think it was. No, and I was reading this article, and it was talking about a barcode that would be like, I don't know, inserted into our lower arm, and we'd have the ability to go around and pay for products, or, you know, be able to read our health, etc., etc. But then you jump forward, and, you know, you look at a product like an Apple Watch. It has that ability, doesn't it? You can, you know, you can read your messages, you can check what your, you know, your heart rate is, etc. The technology's there in the here and now, but it will just continue to evolve, and people will want more in terms of, okay, what can this technology give me next? What's important to me to know that I don't necessarily have to think about it? I think if you look at the retail landscape and the way in which, you know, offline and online are merging more so. So, you know, in terms of physical retail presence, the amount of technology that's now seamlessly in store, it just joins up more of the experiences for, you know, for potential customers. So it will continue to be disruptive, I think. Did I waffle on there, Carlos? Got a knack of waffling on.
Yeah, yeah. No, 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 no. It's perfect. It makes sense. Uh, my the other thing I wanted to ask you is how do you? So we spoke a lot about leadership, and you have had a leadership role throughout your career, right? So, what can you comment some of your learnings and also challenges, especially when implementing digital commerce projects? They take a long time. Like replatforming can be something
Mm.
very challenging. So perhaps you want to share some of your learnings there. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're replatforming, you know, a website, you're moving from one provider, perhaps that's in-house, moving to a, you know, a licensed super tanker, a big player that's out there. It's really important to not just consider the end state for the customer or the user, but it's really important to consider those that are going to be using the tools. So, for example, you're a
Hmm.
media team. So, if you've got a team of copywriters or merchandisers, so the merchandisers would be positioning the products on a website, changing a promotion and making everything 20% off. You need to take on board what their bugbears are, what their concerns are, what their problems are, and better understand, if you've got this list of wants and, you know, wants and needs, what can this new technology do to support those wants and needs? So I think a biggie for me is ensuring that your team are on board and that you have what their biggest concerns are when you're looking to replatform or update. So again, I've been in a situation before at John Lewis whereby, yes, we were replatforming, but we then had to very quickly start looking at impact. So if we went live and we didn't have this piece of technology bolted onto the website, what is the impact, small, medium, large? And very, again, I say very quickly, we looked at it from a customer lens, but actually you need to look at it from a user lens. So a user that's using the back end of the business tool, because, you know, in a good week, we could launch 2,000 products. In a peak week, we could launch 6,000 products onto the front end of a website. But actually, if your back end processes are manual for your users, your employees, it's going to take considerably longer to launch those products than perhaps it did compared to the archaic system that you're trying to get rid of as such. So yeah, getting the
Hmm.
opinions and thoughts of your team that are going to be using new technology, whether you're replatforming, updating, or just thinking of testing and learning something is really important because, they're the eyes and the ears of using the technology as such. I think
Yeah,
another
brilliant.
example.
And yeah, go please. Go on, go
Sorry,
on.
there's a slight lag,
It's the
isn't there?
delay. Just
I try to
there's a
think.
bit of lag. Yeah.
I try to think of another situation whereby, again, it comes back to people, and we were in a situation whereby we were going into autumn winter peak, and I was overseeing something like 350,000 SKUs on a website, and we'd recently replatformed. We'd done an update, and we had an outage. Deliberately, we had an outage so that we could do testing. So we didn't want to launch we didn't want to launch products onto the front end of the website whilst we continued to do some testing in the back end and then some testing in live. But what that then meant is we then created this backlog of products that were required to launch onto the website. It was something like £10 million worth in UK sterling of stock that needed to go live. So instead of, I've learned a lot during the course of being a leader. Instead of going to my team and saying, what should we do? Should we do this, this, or this? I just made a decision and said, we're doing this. We're going to launch products without any copy. We're going to do a title and we'll fill in what attributes that we have. And it was a disaster. The team backlashed, and very quickly I learned the lesson in terms of it's important to ask other people what their opinion is in terms of, okay, if we've got a backlog of, millions of pounds worth of stock, what's your thoughts in terms of how we get this onto the front end of the website really quickly? Because what I failed to, and this is what's really important as a leader, you put your hands up when you make a mistake. What I failed to then consider, because I had this urgency and, the executive board behind me saying, get the products live, get the products live. I was trying to take that heat off of the team and myself, if I'm honest, but I was keen just to get the products onto the front end. But it's like a double-edged sword, because you're in this situation whereby not only are you upsetting your team because you've got creative copywriters there that you're just telling to just switch products live onto the front end, but also it's then having an impact in terms of SEO, so search engine optimization. You've got no keywords in that copy. You haven't filled out all of the attributes. The titles aren't optimized. So it's only customers that hit the site that are going to necessarily see those products or use search, where, in the best world, you would optimize those products in their entirety before they have to go live. So yeah, I learned the hard way in terms of being a leader. That was a difficult one.
Well, that's a good one. It's a learning. So, what I would like to ask you, I had a call this morning with someone who's going to be also an Evolve ambassador, but he's an ISV, or what we call like a software integrator, someone who would implement the technology over at John Lewis or V&A Museum. And ISVs, of course, I cannot make a general statement, but many of them, they don't tell the whole truth. Like some say that you should, go with their thesis, right? Some companies, they say, you have to use, let's say, microservices and go with whatever VTEX, whatever platform it is, when you actually need like an open source solution. So, and I don't want to go so much deep in that because it's not my field, but in your experience and what you've learned, what are the questions that you, as a buyer, like you on the shoes of the buyer, you have to ask a vendor? Because I think that's very important in a collaboration. I have a vendor, someone in Sweden who's very interesting, and he also asks very hard questions to buyers, because sometimes buyers, they don't know what they want. They think they want something, but they need guidance. But you, in all your learnings, what are the conclusions you come about from that experience?
I think what's really important is, and you touched on this, as a buyer, you really need to be able to crystallize what you're looking for. So if if you've got, let's say, a new piece of technology coming on board and it's the hottest thing out there, or you believe it's going to be the hottest thing, and you're going to go out to tender to um, 10 suppliers as such, you start with crystallizing what your requirements are, what you're hoping, what your aim is for this technology. So whether that's to improve the on-site experience, to drive, some of your key metrics like conversion or an upside in some of them. But it's really important to, particularly where you could be going into unknown territory, because large scale businesses probably re-platform every 10 10 to 8 to 10 years, depending on the technology that's kind of coming through. As such, I think I'm just thinking about this. I think it's really important that you have, when you're going out, you're meeting these vendors, that they've got case studies, they've got examples of other people that they've worked with and what their results were. Because I know I've met some providers, or I've been part of a group that have gone out and we've tendered for something. Can you say, okay, what results are you seeing against your KPIs, your metrics? Oh, we see an upside to conversion of 200%, and we're just like, wow, that's incredible. Talk us through it. And then sometimes they struggle to talk you through how they got to that number, because I think sometimes a vendor will think that potential buyer just wants to know what the stats are, but instead what we were keen to understand is, okay, talk us through those building blocks. How did you get to that number in terms of, you're going to put a 200% increase year on year on on whatever metric it was. So yeah, seeing case studies, but also if they have worked with a similar size business, encouraging a two-way conversation. So let's say it was, I'll make this up, and they no longer exist, but there was a department store group where they've got one store now, because their website was sold on. They went into administrations. They were a department store called Debenhams. So if Debenhams had got into bed with this technology, so if Debenhams have got into bed with this technology provider, what is stopping John Lewis having a conversation with Debenhams about this piece of technology? Not in terms of, sharing confidential information. Far from it. It's just a better understanding. Okay, well, what was the onboarding process like? Did you see the results? That the vendor is saying that they recorded. Did you provide that information? That kind of thing. Instilling more trust into the process. And I think when you then whittle it down in terms of, okay, you go out to 10 vendors, you receive back their packs in terms of against your strategy, and they fill out these slides, if you like, around what they can do to deliver against it. As you continue to whittle it down, don't be afraid to have a call like this, like we're having, or if they're based in the same town as you, meet them in person. It's fascinating that some relationships are just built on phone calls. There's a lot of trust in there, but it's got to be what's right for your business, and cost is a big part of it. So if I look back to the V&A Museum, my budget would be like this, but like this. Where at John Lewis, it'd be much bigger. So it's being mindful of your budget, and being aware when someone says to you, "Oh, there's no integration costs," especially at a large player like John Lewis. Oh, it's easy. You just bolt it on. You just bolt it on. The amount of times I heard, "Oh, it's super quick. It's easy. We can do it overnight," and it's like, it takes much, like 25 systems, 25 or 30, like 25 systems that kind of had to all interact with one another. So you can't necessarily just bolt something onto, an existing system as such. Testing is really important as well.
Very interesting. So, benchmarking, and perhaps I'm trying to wrap up what you said, because I think this is such an important lesson for vendors, also for ISVs, and whoever is watching this or is going to watch this afterwards, having a benchmark and eventually seeing what the implementation process was like,
Yeah.
the challenges. Eventually, if they can introduce you to someone, I think that would be a big win, because it just shows transparency, right? That went through that process. Looking at the total cost of ownership, that's something you said, right? Because these platforms, they say, okay, we just charge a fee on the transaction, but how about the integrations? Also, the capability within your
Yes.
team that sometimes, right, you don't have it, and then you need to get people up to speed. So that can be a real challenge. Very interesting, Bradley. I think we're about to. I mean, we're on to 41 minutes. Perhaps if you just share. I think we spoke about leadership also, in regards to pitching a project to the top leadership, and I think this is something you can help emerging leaders with, like, to prepare them, because they will have to face boards, and sometimes boards, they just think it's easy to implement the technology, but they need to prepare a budget, they will need to to make a sale, right? So what's your experience, what's been like working for a company like John Lewis, also at DNA, because your budget there was smaller, as you said. Right,
Yeah.
right.
I think
Big dreams but tiny budget.
absolutely. Well, I think it very much depends on what your EB, your executive board, expects from you when you're pitching for funding. At John Lewis, we got to a place whereby it all started as big decks of information, everybody flipping through multiple pages. But some of the best presentations I've done, including during my time at the V&A, was the one pager. So you need to be able to demonstrate on that one pager what it is you're looking to bring into the business, what the benefits are going to be. So whether that's revenue or whichever metrics you're measuring against, what it is, what the benefits are, what happens if you don't do something. So, for example, if we don't get the funding for this initiative, it will mean that we lose market share in terms of online. If we don't move to a better fulfillment solution, it means our delivery score won't improve, particularly if you've got a lot of negative feedback from your customer base or parcels going missing. So arguably you could say if we don't do it, the risk is X, and what the impact will be also for the business. So to your earlier point, when you're bringing something into the business, it's too simple sometimes just to say, we're going to see an upside of £1 million or £2 million from improving or bolting on this piece of technology. But actually in the back end, you need an army of people to plug in to the system the relevant data. So it's considering what the other dependencies are. And also, and we started to fine tune this in particularly at John Lewis. And this is learning from our mistakes in all fairness. What other teams have you engaged with, and making sure no other team is going after what you're going after. So, at head office, there was 5,000 people for John Lewis based in London. There was various initiatives and project teams working on different things. The number of times probably count on two hands. It's quite big, whereby two teams are both going into the executive board, both pitching for a similar idea because they think they can improve the customer experience or the on-site, whether that's search or the photography standards, etc., etc. So it's really important to kind of line up behind the scenes before you go in and you do a pitch. When you're physically in there and you're doing that pitch, you won't always have the answers, and that's fine. And a great board or board member or owner will say to you, okay, go away, come back in 2 weeks and answer these questions for me. I think the days are gone whereby a board will say yes or no almost immediately. What tends to happen is, if there's multiple different teams all pitching for investment, they'll go away, they'll consider their options, they'll score it against a matrix in terms of, okay, what the benefits be, and then they'll feed back to those that are pitching the initiative.
Brilliant, really nice. Bradley, I think we spoke a lot about multiple things. You are an ambassador, the UK ambassador for Evolve. So I'm very excited
Yes.
about what the conversations that we're going to have with other people. So thanks very much for this today. I hope you enjoyed as well. It was your first live session, right? So I think you did great,
Yes,
man.
live session. Thanks everybody for listening in.
Very cool. And thanks very much. And we'll catch up afterwards.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone. See
Bye
you.
now.
Bye.